I'm wondering, well, no, I don't think a headset will be, I think it'll be all right. Okay, hi. All right, I'm gonna get off the phone then. Okay,
Okay. So,
there we go. Hi.
Jodi, do I have you audio too?
Yeah, I've got the audio on. Do you want me to go up higher? Do you want me to get, I can use my headset. It might sound better. Do you think that would sound better?
I see your mouth moving. I hear nothing. Okay, so we're starting again. I'll go ahead and start an intro here. Robyn Kesnow, RVT with Animal RN. And this is our little animal hospice solutions. Today I have Jodi Z. Bear with us. We're playing with technology because that's always good and fun. And once we get it dialed in, I'll tell you all about Jodi and how awesome she is.
Does it sound better? Can you hear me yet? No? This is so weird. Okay. No?
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, I got you now.
All right.
Nice. Hello.
Hello.
I hear you and see you. This is good.
That's a good thing. All right.
Okay, so we can cut out the technology stuff. So in the meantime, I thought, let me just go ahead and recap who the heck we both are, right?
Okay.
So I am Robyn Kesnow, RVT, and founder of Animal RN. I have these animal hospice solutions where one of the concerns I have is doing animal hospice. How do you do it? What does it mean? It's such a gray line comfort care, and yet there's so much to it that bringing together people and resources that have the tools, and then of course running Animal RN. Many of the things that we end up using in animal hospice are helpful to have just in keeping dogs and cats and having a good, healthy life, staying out of the vet when we can, being nice and healthy, and getting in there when we need to so that we have small little tweaks in our healthcare rather than big, major medical incidences. And you are Jodi Z, as you are infamously known on social media and whatnot. And you have a beautiful new website, which is
Thank you.
healthypetcoach.com. So it's healthypetcoach.com. I'm going to actually see if it'll let me share the link so that way it's available for people right away. Healthypetcoach.com. And I know you are I call you my nutrition guru. You're somebody I go to. You're someone when vets are having trouble, you know, they've done the prescription diets and sometimes we need to go a little further. You're somebody that I feel they can relate to pretty easily and kind of come in as part of the team. And I know your personal story, it was, early mid-2000s, and you had a kitty that had something happen that got you on this road. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, and this was before hospice was really well known within the pet community, and I had asked my own vet about hospice, and nobody even knew what I was talking about, and it was very frustrating. But that was towards the end, so let's go back to the beginning. She was around 14 or 15, and she was diagnosed with, everything. It was kidney failure, irritable bowel disease, hypothyroid, like everything that goes wrong with the cat, like everything at once. And this was a cat just like every other cat. She was great until she wasn't. And I think that's part of the frustration all pet parents have. But my conventional vet is very open-minded, and he said to me, I know how you are about your own health. I'd love for you to see a holistic vet. And I did. And this is the man that changed my life, Dr. Larry Bernstein. And he does do consultations, so if people aren't in Florida and they'd like to consult with him, they can, naturalholistic.com. But anyway, I went to him, and he kind of told me about food and herbs and homeopathy, and I still looked at him like he was crazy, but I took his advice, and we changed a lot of things. I approached everything with an integrative approach. We still did subcutaneous fluids. I went to the vet 3 times a week because she would not let me do it at home. She was the mightiest little thing you've ever met in your life. I could do everybody else's cat or dog, but I couldn't do my own. So we did that. Went for acupuncture, and I'll tell you something. She ended up off of all of her medication. She ended up eating well, and she lived 6 more years. And she lived well for 6 years. So it worked. So that's when I decided to go back to school. Got my master's in holistic nutrition, went on and took courses so I could be certified as a pet nutrition consultant. So obviously I'm not a vet. I don't diagnose. I don't treat to disease, but I can help just about any pet eat better, eat healthier, help. I can't use the word prevent, but the truth is if you keep a pet healthy and keep that immune system strong, there are a lot of things that won't go wrong, and that's what I concentrate on.
Excellent, excellent. So I know for me, I have a story, and I'm gonna just go for it, right? Just go straight to the elephant in the room. Go straight to calling it out. It's white. We're gonna talk about it. And as a veterinary technician, when I worked in the clinic, I noticed veterinarians and technicians getting snatched up by the pet food companies, and it always kind of drove me nuts because as soon as I would find either a technician or a veterinarian who really focused on nutrition, and this was years ago before there was any kind of specialty, these guys would get snatched up by the R&D department and the sales departments of the pet food companies. And I am sure there are lots of things that are out there in the world that are good. And sometimes there are things out there that are great for what someone is willing to do or whatever, right? We don't have to go into a bashing on what's better and what's not. We don't have to be purist. However, it was really frustrating that somebody would be really knowledgeable about general nutrition and be able to pinpoint and how it interacts with disease in the body or wellness in the body, as the case may be, and then they would get snatched up by a company, so then their bias, their bottom line is affected by whether or not they sell the product. And science...
Well, I'll go a step further with that. Vets in general have one nutrition course in veterinary school, and it's sponsored by either Hills, which is prescription and science diet, or Purina. All the continuing education is also through these companies. So it is kind of it really shouldn't be legal, but it is.
Right. And I always say that with the healthcare for humans and the healthcare for animals, in my experience, we're usually 5 to 10 years behind our medicine. And something that this food industry has brought up, our prescription, our the chemistry is kind of coming forward, and not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it really is like our medicine 5, 10, and 15 years ago. And to be honest, not to go too far off on a tangent, but even pet insurance is becoming the same thing, where veterinary laboratories and insurance companies are owning clinics and therefore driving the bottom line of that business. And is it or is it not affecting the veterinary care and consultations that are happening?
I believe it is. I think you're right. I think even calling the food prescription is misleading because it's just a trademark. It's not a designation. So I think people are really unaware of that. Also, the ingredients that go into most of these foods are feed grade, not human grade. So again, the science is probably right, the chemicals that go into it and how much of this and how much of this. But then when it comes to producing the actual food, they're using the cheapest ingredients they can to meet the actual ingredient list that a good veterinary nutritionist probably came up with. So, the end result isn't great. Now, some people will swear this helped my pet, and I'm sure it does because a lot of them started out with really bad food, and this was a step up, or at least getting rid of certain ingredients that were in other foods and going to this, which is a little better quality. But in my opinion, real food is still going to always be better, especially if you have an ailing pet. And if we're talking about pets in hospice too, I know it's a whole other end of the spectrum, but if we're dealing with that as well, real food is going to make them feel better. It's going to affect the immune system in a better way. It's going to make them stronger in most cases. Every pet's different, obviously, and every case is different.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So when you say real food, what does that mean? I'm a busy person, I'm running around, and I have an animal, and I do want the best for them, and I've just barely started eating well myself, if I'm being honest, within the last few years. So what does it mean to me to feed real food to my dog and cat? What does that look like?
Well, and you can do a homemade food from scratch, which is very doable. And honestly, it takes 20 minutes twice a week. It takes less time than driving to the pet food store and back. So I don't want to hear that time excuse. But there are people who hate cooking, and I get that, and that's fine. There are some really good dehydrated and freeze-dried foods on the market. So you add water, and poof, it's homemade food. And those are all made with human-grade ingredients and really high-end. There's raw food, there's frozen raw food, and dehydrated and all that stuff. But there are also some premixes. So even the busiest person can throw a pound of meat on the stovetop with some water and cook it for 7 minutes and mix it with these premixes. And really, that's real food. But it's obviously knowing the protein to fat to carbohydrate ratio, understanding the bioappropriate nutritional needs of pets, and that's kind of where I come in, is helping to get that recipe right for you or guide you. You might already have a great recipe, but your pet's just not doing well on it. Maybe sometimes it's tweaking, making sure that the vitamins and the minerals are all in there, especially the calcium to protein ratio. So, there are definitely some intricate things that go into it, but I promise it's like anything else. It's a habit. After the couple times, look, I'm vegan and I make food for my cats, and it's disgusting. But I do it, and I just get into like this mode. It's for the babies. It's for the babies, and you just do it. And I don't even think about it. I don't even think about a recipe anymore. I've been doing it for so long. I just do it.
So let's talk about cost, because one of the other objections I hear pretty often is, well, it's going to cost me more. And I guess it depends on where you're starting. So what can people expect? I mean, because you give a lot of different options, homemade, premixes, dehydrated. So I'm sure there's a range, but what are we talking about with money here?
That's actually less expensive than feeding good canned food. A small cat can eat for $1 a day. A large dog, $4 a day. And if you add that up, it still isn't as much as you're probably spending even on those giant bags of food, considering the amount of food they have to eat. The better the food, the less food they need. So the portions come down. I know it's like well, let me think, because there's a client I'm actually going to be working with who has just like a little 15-pound dog. In order to eat really good canned food, it's 10 ounces a day. When we do homemade or some of these pre-mixed foods, it's going to be 6 ounces a day. And that will hit all the requirements. And the cost can change. I'll just throw out some names out there of some companies that are really good. Grandma Lucy's, which is a California company, all human grade, wonderful food, great assortment of foods too, because I think people are unaware that I have a cat running around like crazy. I don't know what's happening. The two biggest allergens for dogs are beef and chicken, and a lot of cats end up with an allergy to chicken as well. So Grandma Lucy's, they don't do a lot for cats, but for dogs they have things like goat and rabbit and venison and buffalo and all sorts of things. So anyway, those come out to less than $1 a day, even for a medium-sized dog. Large dog is going to be more. Then you have some higher-end foods like Stella and Chewy's and Primal and the freeze-dried. It's going to be costly, but it depends. I mean, you measure it against veterinary bills, and I know there's no guarantees in life, but when a dog or cat eats well, chances are they're not going to have stomach issues, skin issues, all sorts of things that are the little things that take you to the vet, that those little numbers add up. You have to keep getting those steroid shots and eventually an endoscopy because the stomach's not healing. You add all that up together. I tell cat people or people with small and medium dogs, one endoscopy is about 6 years worth of food. Oh, wow. So what would you rather feed, that 6 years or go for that endoscopy?
I was one of those people. I definitely was somebody who swore. I was taught by the pet food companies as part of my going through, it was Western Career College at the time, now Carrington College. And even in the clinic, our continuing education we would get that was free, which is, of course, when you're a young student. I was going through getting my bachelor's at the time, as well as working as an RVT. That's the continuing education you're going to sign on for. And I believed that, darn it, there's so many options on the shelf. There's something that I can feed out of the bag. I didn't cook for myself. There was no way I was cooking for my dog. I was a responsible pet owner, and I had a budget, and I didn't sign on to have children for a reason. And I had this thing, and I love it wasn't for lack of love. It was just this line in the sand that, darn it, I would do anything, and now you're pushing too far. Like, now you're asking for things that I'm not doing for myself, and that doesn't seem right. And for me, my kind of change on this was when I had an animal. It's the animal hospice things. You are willing to do things at the end of an animal's life that you're not willing to do any other time. You know, I can sustain cooking for him if he's only got a little bit of time left and it's going to make his quality of life that much better. I would be a fool to not try that, because he deserved that. And so I start cooking for an elder dog. A holistic vet, I hadn't known you at the time, put me together with a recipe, and we figured something out. His quality of life improved so much that literally I wouldn't have gotten the puppy that I got when I did, because he was so much more hyper. We got 2 years of beauty. We thought he was dying, and it was 2 years of insane quality of life, and I believe it was tied to the food. And I don't have the science to back it up, but I can tell you we have the chemistries that show that his values were improved. We have the anecdotally living with him and telling those stories, and I watched it happen, and it happened. I never went back since then. So the puppy then became, well, you're on a diet that's natural, real food as well, and we're not doing processed stuff. And I still took a couple years to convert my own diet. But the point being, you're right. At first, it took more time. I didn't even know how to use a food processor. It sounds like a scary thing. It's a blender with sharper blades. For people who need to know. You know, I didn't know how to chop a tomato, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm being completely serious. However, in just literally 2 or 3 weeks of doing it, I got my rhythm down. I figured out exactly what tool I needed, exactly what to do. And because once the recipe is set, it took a little bit to fine-tune it like you're talking about. But once the recipe was set, we had a groove, and it was 40 minutes on a Sunday, and I think it takes 20 minutes now, and it might even be only 20 minutes for the week for that particular dog food, feeding one dog. And I've done the cost analysis numerous times, and especially when the cost of the protein we're using went up, I redid it, and every time it comes out to be about what I was spending on a medium quality bag of dog food, and the bowel movements were better, our vet bills have decreased, and it's just one person, so we can't say that that's going to happen for everybody, but I'll tell you, the families I work with that feed well stay out of the vet. Big.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, I always recommend, obviously, you go for a yearly visit. Be careful with vaccines. Talk to your vet. Vaccine should be an individualized thing. It should not be automatic. Even the American Veterinary Medical Association shows that most of the vaccines are good for 4 to 5 years. You can do titer testing. VaxiCheck is one of the best things to do. Vaccinosis, over-vaccination, accounts for a lot of problems, and they're starting to even link pancreatitis to that. But a lot of immune system problems, and now we know 50% of dogs are dying of cancer. And that's just a ridiculous number, and part of it can be diet, but part of it is the vaccine thing. So I mean, that's I know it's a whole other issue, but the body as a whole, and coming from a holistic place, we treat everything together. So in addition to diet, it is preventative care, being really careful with the vaccines, only vaccinating when necessary. Rabies is mandated in most places. Go if it's available in your area, a 3-year. It's just a teeny bit more solution. It'll last 3 years. If your vet has allergic problems with the vaccines, and some do, make the vet not do it. Most of them will voluntarily say your animal can't take this, and they're exempt. So just be very careful with vaccines. But going back to the food, can I just say, and I don't want to turn anybody off, but the one thing to never feed your pet is dry food. What it does to the whole body.
It's a big deal. So let's go into that. I have 3 questions here lined up, and one of the ones right at the top is, I know that you say, please, 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 you're begging me to get the message out to not do dry food. Why is dry food such a problem? Even a high quality premium, like go straight for the guns. We won't even address the cheap stuff.
Right. Even the best, the best stuff does start with really good ingredients. They really do. A lot of them are human grade ingredients. But here's the thing. All dry food is full of starch, even if it's grain-free, because that's how it sticks together. And so that starch is already the beginning of a problem. Dogs and cats are not meant to digest these kind of things. They don't produce amylase in their saliva like we do. We are actually omnivores. They are really carnivores. Dogs can be categorized as scavenger omnivores only because they can survive without meat for short periods of time. They won't thrive, but they can survive. And don't even get me started on the vegetarian thing. and again, this is speaking as a vegan. If you want a vegetarian pet, get yourself a nice, cute little rabbit. I'm just saying. But with dogs, so they can't really break it down. And so that's the beginning of it. Also, it keeps animals chronically dehydrated. Even if they're drinking copious amounts of water, they're still dehydrated. Cats, by nature, are desert creatures, and on dry food, they are almost always chronically dehydrated. So the next thing that happens is their digestive tracts can't really handle breaking down that food. It's foreign. It's not biologically appropriate. So what happens is there's a big strain. The gastric juices are being used up quickly. So the body starts taking liquid from other organs, trying to get the stuff broken down. So this is a cumulative thing, obviously. But dry food has been connected by many holistic vets with kidney disease, liver disease, IBS, and then you go into the lymph starts thickening, and the blood starts slowing down, and you start having problems with the joints. When you see things like hot spots or chronic rashes and stuff on pets, that's the biggest organ. That's the final place things are coming out. So you start seeing yeast in the ears, chronic itching, and hot spots, and a lot of times it goes back to the food. Even changing from dry food to a good canned food oftentimes helps a variety of pets. I'm still, canned food, if I have a client that just will not go for the better stuff, then yeah, there's a couple of good brands out there that can sustain. I think it gets expensive when you're dealing with canned food. That's a big drawback, I think, over a lifetime for part of the time. And that's the other thing too. I don't want people to feel like I can only do one thing. If you have a crazy life and you run out of some dehydrated food, then yeah, go ahead, give the canned food. It's okay. Once they're on really good food, the transition is a little bit easier. But anyway, I know, I'm sorry, I digress.
No,
Going back to the dry food.
It's a perfect transition too, because one of my other questions is availability. So we're talking about these crazy things that you can get. So let's assume for a minute somebody chooses to cook. And something that you and I have talked about with some of the families that we've worked with is having a backup plan. So if I'm going to cook for my animal and I go out of town, I end up delayed longer. When my grandfather was sick and he ultimately passed away, I was there back east, not where I live, and taking care of my grandmother and her arrangements and everything, and I ended up there for a month. If the people helping me care for my dog hadn't been able to go get food, and asking them to make food, it was kind of a last-minute pet sitting arrangement. It wasn't really the ideal solution. It's part of what I have Animal RN now. So the point being, so if we are feeding a home-cooked food, what I heard you just say is that it is okay to have a dehydrated or a canned food as a backup plan, or maybe even an A, B, and C. And if you're somebody who travels a lot, let's talk about what is the availability of these products. How hard or easy is it to get some of these things if cooking is either your normal or you need a backup plan for whatever you have going?
Yeah, so the best thing about these dehydrated foods and these freeze-dried foods is they're available everywhere, including online. You can get great deals on places like Chewy.com, even Amazon.com. Oh God, there's a few of them now, PetFlow. So there are some really good ones out there, or right from the manufacturer's site sometimes. But they run Chewy.com runs specials, Doggyfood.com, they run specials all the time, so you get big discounts. So it's really available everywhere. There's not an excuse to say, well, it's not available near me. I have clients that like in places like Iowa where they don't even have a Whole Foods near them. They can't even get certain things like, really good organic vegetables unless it's the time of year and there's a couple of organic, markets, whatever. But they just order the food online. So it's very easy to get. Now, if you're in California, lucky enough to be living in that wonderful state of California, you've got so many more choices and so much more availability of everything. There are even places that are standalone, or they're almost like Starbucks, and it's just dog food. You go in and you can, I think it's called Just Dog Food or Just Food for Dogs. It's like a whole chain now, or they have 4 or 5 different places. But you can go in and just get homemade food. But there's so many great stores there. A lot of the companies are based in California, as you can imagine. So there's just a huge amount of availability. Also, your Whole Foods stores out in California actually carry some of these freeze-dried foods, which is really nice. We don't have that in Florida so much. But there are always independent stores. And the independent retailers are great because they will order things for you. Maybe they carry the line, but not the product you want. They'll make sure they get it in for you, and at a reasonable price. So.
And I think the biggest one right there, the punchline, if there's going to be a takeaway, rather than remembering all these names of different places, rather than going to the Google thank goodness for the Google, is Amazon. So once you do have an idea of what you want, I mean, if you're an Amazon Prime member, it's 2-day, you know, if you are traveling, you can always overnight yourself some food. It sounds a little extreme, and yet what is it worth for good health care? So one of the other recipe questions I have is around recipes. So walk me through for a minute. When I send you someone, what is the process? What are they looking to get when I have somebody come over to talk to you? Because I know that what they end up with is a recipe and a healthier pet that needs less meds, that has a better attitude, that vomits less. Like, all of these symptoms are much prettier. I know the end result, but let's walk through, when I send somebody to you, what happens there? What do they expect?
Okay, so what we do is we start out with the consultation. Since obviously most of the people are coming from outside of my area, I'm not going to their homes, but I do things by Skype or by telephone, whatever's easiest, whatever's most comfortable for people. So we talk for about an hour, and well, first thing I do is I send you a little form to fill out so that I kind of have a little background what's going on. Then we talk, and after that I put together I call it either a kitty Bible or a doggy Bible, and it's 8 to 12 page report, and we cover everything from nutrition to enrichment, environment, and care. So we start out with, I don't like to tell people just what to do. I tell them why and how to change things. I let them know there might be problems along the way. This is what you do if there are problems. You know, if your dog gets diarrhea while we're changing foods, give them a little pumpkin. You know, things like that can really be a help. But I have to first make sure what you're comfortable with. You know, there are people that they have 4 dogs and 3 kids, and there's no way in hell they're going to be cooking, and I get that. So I find them the next best thing. So I work according to that, but I give them other suggestions, because maybe they're going to start out a certain way, but once they're comfortable with that, they might move on. So I give them more information about that as well. We talk about everything, though. I mean, I even talk about chemicals used in the house. Little hints like have people take off their shoes when they enter your home. Shoes carry in pesticides and pests and all sorts of other crap, you know. So even for you, when you come home, take off your shoes. You don't bring it in. Your animals are on the floor. They're licking. I mean, they're getting all that. So there's little things like that. Ways to clean your home without having to use harsh chemicals. I mean, just sometimes baking soda and white vinegar will clean just about everything. White vinegar is the best fabric softener you can find. It makes your rice fluffy too. I mean, it's good for everything, you know. So and I kind of line things up and give you kind of hints. In the report, I also link to local stores that will carry your products, as well as online stores. I try to make it as easy as possible, because I know if it's easier, you're going to do it. You know, and also, you know, it's sometimes if I'm dealing with an 8-year-old dog or a 9-year-old cat, it took 8 or 9 years to get to that point, so things aren't going to reverse in a week. But it's amazing what happens after about a month. I get calls all the time, like, I can't believe how my dog's coat feels, or my cat, now the cat poop, you can't even smell it. Oh yeah, and that's the big advantage. With raw food, I'm going to tell you this now, raw food, there's no stinky poop. It is the best thing ever. It's like little nuggets, and it's the same amount every time. It's like for a cat, like 5 little nuggets, for a dog, like 8 little nuggets, and there's no smell. Homemade, not no smell, but not smelly. Like, you know it's poop, but it's not like, oh my God, somebody pooped. When you're dealing with canned food and dry food especially, it's just nasty, and I think that turns a lot of people off. But you know, I have 3 cats and 3 litter boxes, and if I had to deal with, oh God, it would have been awful.
So one of the things that I know is super important, so just recently, I'll use a story as a way to ask this question. I had a family that I work with, and they had a new puppy come into their lives, and one of the family members really wanted this puppy on raw food. And raw food doesn't scare me, right? We've worked together. Raw food doesn't scare me. However, what scares me is raw food, cooked food, any of these things done poorly is a bigger problem than even, say, the dry food, because
Yes.
It's not getting the nutrients. It's not a balanced diet. Forget being tailored to that one individual. It's not great at all. When we're acting with an animal RN as a pet sitting company, and they're like, oh, just throw them a chicken back here and there. Whoa, whoa, whoa! I need to know how do we know that the nutrients are getting in and that those nutrients are available? So for people who are already doing raw, or they're already cooking a diet, you do a review, right, to help make sure that they have what they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, look, even for us, there's a reason we have to take supplements sometimes too, even though the quality of the supplements, they're important. You want food, just for you, for everybody, people, you want food-sourced vitamins and minerals. The synthetics do nothing. You're making expensive pee. It's all you're doing. But for the animals, look, the soil isn't good. A lot of the quality isn't good for a lot of reasons. But they still need B vitamins. They still need the right balance of calcium to the meat. And it's very easy to do this. There's one company, and I'll say it because I think they're great. Celestial Pets, celestialpets.com. To me, it's the best mix. It's a pure vitamin mineral mix. It's all food grade. It's all, I mean, you smell it. It smells like kelp, but it also has the right balance of of calcium. They use bone meal, but it's human, from a human grade animal. It's not just like some steamed whatever. They have glands in there too, so there's like eyeballs and stuff. Again, you don't see this, you don't smell it. It just smells like kelp, I promise. But it's the perfect balance, and it's very palatable. And that makes a big difference too, because if something tastes a little wonky, your pets might walk away. There are some other ones too. Look, sometimes the company, it's a two-person company, honestly, and sometimes they're not as responsive as maybe they should be, and it turns some people off, and I get that. So I do have backups. There are other companies that make some really good supplements that you can obviously use. But to me, it's a CYA thing, adding the vitamins and minerals like that. But still, I've seen a lot of people doing raw food really poorly, where there isn't the balance of calcium. They're not balancing the fat. There's absolutely no omega-3s, usable omega-3s in there. There's a B vitamin deficiency because they still need vegetables. Dogs especially need vegetables and the fruits. Cats need much less. Both cats and dogs get their energy from protein and from fat. Carbohydrates are not what gives them energy. They're not humans like us. Cats need very little. So it's knowing the right proportions. I suggest pumpkin for almost every recipe. Pumpkin is just it's like the best food ever. It can help keep that digestive tract working beautifully. And if they do have constipation or diarrhea, it works for that. It's soluble and insoluble. It's full of enzymes. It's full of vitamins. So there's definitely a way to do it. Good green veggies. Doesn't have to be fresh. It could be frozen vegetables. That's fine. It can be as easy or as difficult as you want it to be.
Okay. So one of the complaints that I've heard people have that really are at that next level, they're already have done home food or they're into raw or whatever, and for example, I'm going to pick on Primal. It's an example that you gave as something that's an option, and it was Primal's not high enough protein. And so what do we say for those things? I mean,
no, it's not true. Primal actually has a really good amount of protein. There are other companies that maybe aren't as good as they are, but it's still any type of these raw foods or the dehydrated foods they still have tons more protein than any canned or dry food. Just to let you know that. Dogs and cats do need a lot of protein, but it has to be individualized too. A dog who is susceptible to pancreatitis is going to probably need a little less fat and protein than a dog who is perfectly healthy. Cats need higher protein, much higher protein. And I think people confuse the amount of meat with protein. Meat isn't 100% protein. So I think people get a little thrown. I had a client who they were going to go to one of the companies where it was 95% meat, bone, and whatever. And she's like, it's 95% protein. I'm like, no, it's about 30% protein. You've got to remember, meat's also made with a lot of moisture.
I think that might be the big misunderstanding is meat versus protein.
Right, and that happens. It's a very easy thing to misunderstand. Also, the way the pet food industry works is it screws us up anyway, because they talk about crude protein, which is a mathematical equation which means nothing. It means nothing.
Don't get me started on trying to read the labels. It's
infuriating.
It's just decoration on the bag at this point.
It is, and it's not even like a normal equation. It's like 0.0876 times. I don't even, whatever. And when it comes out at the end, it ends up being like 18% protein. So it's ridiculous, and I think that should be illegal. Honestly, I think that it should be what it is. Some other dangers with some of these foods too, and we're finding this out more and more now, is AAFCO sets certain standards, and those are minimal standards.
What is the
AAFC? Oh, American something feeding. Oh, I can't even get it. It's American Association of Feed Control Officers. Thank you.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you. And there are different ones in every state, so sometimes regulations are different in every state, which is a whole nother whatever. But these are people that are also in charge of feed for cows and for pigs and for chickens and for your pets. They did have to set standards, and I appreciate that. I understand why that happened. It is mostly for the minimums. but there's no maximum in a lot of the vitamins and minerals, and that can be an issue. We're finding out that excessive vitamin D is one of the reasons many cats end up with tooth absorption, which is a very serious disease. Too much D is bad for all animals. Too much of omega-3s can lead to vitamin E deficiency. So you really need to know what you're getting. And we're finding out with the foods when they're being individually tested now is that the same bag of food, or 2 different bags of food, same brand, can have completely different nutrients bag to bag. So there might be a thiamine deficiency in one of those bags, or there might be too much. And B vitamins we don't worry about too much. It's a water soluble. You just pee it out. It's fine. But the fat soluble vitamins, the A, D, E, and K, there could be a problem. So, I mean, there's only so much they can do. They're mass producing food. If you saw the meat that comes in, what it looks like dirt. It looks like dump trucks full of dirt is what's being brought into these companies. And if we're dealing with stuff that's feed grade, it's even worse because they're also adding rendered ingredients, which includes circus animals, it includes monkeys that have been tested on, it includes all sorts of things along with tumors and expired meat from Walmart and everything. Those are all the things that go into a rendering plant, and then it's like cleaned up and it's a protein source. So when you see something that says meat meal or meat fat or poultry something, and it doesn't name what it's from, avoid that like the plague. I mean, it's just awful.
So when you and I get on here, we can bandstand. We know we're in the middle of this. We do the research. We're here. But we probably sound like a couple of conspiracy theorists. So are there places that help kind of, we've got our different documentary type movies now. Are there places where people can go where they can see what is the truth, what is hype, and let them make their own decisions, so it's not just a couple of conspiracy theorists out here?
Well, there's actually a really great website called the truthaboutpetfood.com, and she is a consumer advocate. Her name is Susan Thixton, and she really investigates. She just checks things out. She checks out where the ingredients come from. She calls those pet food companies and just asks, where are your vitamins and minerals from? And you know what? This is the sad truth. Most of them don't really know for sure, and I'll tell you why. And it's not their fault. It is, but it isn't. Not their customer service people for sure. It's not their fault. There are companies that all they do is sell to the big pet food companies the mixture of vitamins and minerals. I was just at Super Zoo. It's a big retail pet thing in Las Vegas. There's a row called Ingredients Row. It was the scariest place I've ever been. But this is what they sell. They sell artificial flavors and natural flavors. Natural flavors include MSG, by the way. So when you see natural flavors, especially in dry food, it's oftentimes MSG. We've got to trick the tongue into thinking it's getting more protein than it is. Your dogs and cats, it's like crack. They're actually addicted to this food. So they're like, well, my dog loves the blank, blank, blank. Well, yeah, of course he does. He's addicted. But these things are part of Ingredients Row, and so this is nothing conspiracy. It's right out there. If you pick up pet food industry news, look at the ads. It's like buckets of stuff that they sell to the pet food companies. The first time I read this, and this was right after I got out of school, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Anyway, she also has a site called PetsumerReports.com. And that's a subscription base, but it's like $20 a year or something. It's not anything. But she reviews every single food, and she goes through probably a good 100 a year. I mean, she rates them, and she's doing everything from like the yucky food to the best food, and she doesn't just say like the good foods are the best foods. She's judging by the ingredients, where they're sourced. If there are questionable ingredients like sodium selenate as a vitamin K, because that's been linked with certain things, with carrageenan, like if that there's good and bad reports on that. I'm not going to specify what's right or wrong, but she goes through them all. She gives them 4 paws or 5 paws or 3 paws or 1 paw, and you can imagine what the 1 paw foods are. But it's certain things. It's just knowing, is it the right amount of protein for a dog or a cat? A lot of these labels are so misleading. Even if it's the first ingredient is a meat, especially this happens with dog food, it'll say beef, but the next 4 ingredients are like barley, wheat, corn, and whatever. That means it's more carbohydrates than meat. And again, they don't really break them down. So she kind of clears a lot of that up. I think there's also dogfoodadvisor.com. which does pretty much the same thing, but it's just dog food, not cat food. So that's just another one that's out there. So there are consumer-based places. These are not run by vets or by people making any money on this. That are just, they're people probably have lost a pet, and they started digging and digging, and now they're speaking out.
Sharing what they find, yeah, absolutely. So on that, people might have lost their pets or had pets get sick because of food sometimes, which puts them on a journey where they come into our lives more easily, and specifically into your life. What about, I know when people have a certain disease that they're dealing with, if I find out that I have kidney disease, there's some information I can find out in the world about how I should feed myself in order to make sure that I'm supporting my kidneys as much as possible and allowing my body to self-heal and whatnot. How does disease play into what you do, and specifically when you're working with veterinarians with their clients?
Well, basically, obviously the right nutrition is going to matter as the pet is recovering and moving forward. So when a veterinarian asks me to help out, it's just trying to find the right balance. It's crazy. Kidney disease, with dogs and people, we know that lower protein is the way to go. It absolutely works for us. Cats, it's not the best choice most of the time because they end up with muscle waste and weight loss, and which leads to more kidney problems. So a lot of times it's the quality of the protein. So I try to educate people more about how they can help. Use kidney disease as an example, and that's a good one and there's different types. There's chronic, and there's acute, and then there's actual deterioration that's happening over time. So yeah, but with any kind of disease, again, I don't treat the disease. What I do is help the body strengthen itself. So knowing what's wrong and what to avoid, like a dog or a cat with pancreatitis, we know mostly happens with dogs. It's rare with cats, but it does happen. But it's just maybe even if they're home cooking, maybe they're using meats that are a little too fatty. And you can't really defat meat. People think if you boil it, you defat it, but that's not true either. You just end up getting rid of nutrients. But we want like a leaner meat, like a venison or a rabbit, and that kind of stuff. So using the right vegetables that aren't high in purines, making sure they're still getting their omega-3, but balancing it. So maybe a dog or cat in that situation might need some kind of grain in their food, and I'm not talking about wheat or anything like that, which are really difficult to digest, but things like millet, which is very healing for the digestive tract, slows down the digestion so it's not overwhelming everything. And there's some great supplements. We definitely want to add a probiotic and a digestive enzyme. Even if your dog or cat is healthy as they are, and if you're healthy too, do it. It's great for you. Your immune system is in your gut. Let's get it balanced. So, but mostly, dogs or cats that are going through something, it's always helpful just to help them digest their food. So it makes a difference. And I know we talk about hospice a lot. One of the biggest problems, and I'm probably jumping ahead of your talk here, but is inappetence. That's a big issue, especially any pet that's not feeling well. And getting them to eat is paramount, because how are they going to heal if they're not getting their nutrients? And that's one of the things I help with too. Every cat or dog, is different, but there are different tricks that we can use to get them to eat, and it's difficult. And also knowing when it's time to stop. That's where you guys come in. If the body's breaking down, if the organs are shutting down, they can't eat. Their body doesn't want to eat because it's trying not to. So it's knowing when they still need it and when not, and that's the hardest part. And that's we've all been there. It's the worst place to be.
Yeah, and you're right though. It's something that we end up doing a lot more when we're doing the hospice consultations, and it's helping people find that line. I was just talking about this with somebody last night. They have an adorable cat. He's giant. He's like 22 pounds. He's probably not supposed to be 22 pounds, but it's kind of too late in his life to be worried about that. But he's adorable, and it becomes this balance that right now he's at a place in his healing, potentially, the fat lady hasn't sung, so we need to keep him eating. We need to keep his body fed so that he can be inspired to heal himself, so that he has the energy for the body to do what it has to do to get back into its own groove, its own flow. And yet, at some point, if he doesn't push through the other side of this, it's going to become, we need to really honor him. And so it's this fine tightrope that we walk and that we work with people on, and to be honest, it's kind of a pleasure, because it's amazing how helpful an outside perspective can be. You add the years of experience doing the animal hospice work. You add not being an immediate part of the family. And as much as we love the babies, it's helpful to be one step removed and to come with that medical backing to support the emotional process and, to be honest, really validate what people already know. It is very common sense, but we're not thinking clearly enough to identify it when we're in the middle of trying to support a baby that's not well and may or may not see the other side of this disease or whatever's going on in that moment.
Well, you bring up a good point, too, because even with my own pets, when something's wrong, I become an idiot. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have to really settle down and, like, think. The first thing is, and then I have to, okay, put on your thinking cap. And, like, you know what? Okay, so she threw up. I mean, and by the way, it's not normal for cats to throw up or have fur balls. So, yeah, that's a big deal. It is not normal. If they're doing that, means their stomach is not emptying. Things are backing up, and they're having to dislodge it. They are meant to eat fur. They eat furry rats and crap in the wild. They're meant to digest fur. Most of the time, it is because they're eating grains, and cats should never have grains. There's no biological need for it. Get that out of the diet, and you're winning. You're winning. Even if it's the worst food without grains, it's still better than the best food with. So, well, yeah, there's a line, but whatever. Anyway, so my cat, I think she probably ate a lizard or something that wandered into the house. Oh, God. Anyway, she was, for like 2 days, she threw up, and she was just so sick, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do, and I gave her some slippery elm. Well, don't you know, she was eating 4 hours later. It was like nothing ever happened. So, you know, but it's to that point that when your own pet is going through something, it's very difficult to stay objective because all you want is for them to feel better. One of the lines, I think one of the ways we know when it's time to maybe pull back a little bit is if they're eating all the things they like and doing all the things they like, then you keep going. And they might have an off hour or an off day, but if for the most part they're still them. But when they get to the point where if their favorite thing in the world is melted butter, and they walk away from your finger with melted butter, it's time to say, okay, I need to start thinking in a different way right now. So that's one of my hints, melted butter.
one of the secret tips. Yeah, you know, so I don't know how much, actually, I'd be interested. Let's just talk through this. You and I haven't talked about this, but one of the things that I learned when I was going through tech school, and it was drilled into me when I was getting that degree, and further on as I was going through working as an RVT, and most of my clinical time was in an emergency clinic doing that really life-saving or twiddling your thumbs, life-saving, twiddling your thumbs. And one of the things that was drilled and drilled and drilled is that if they're not eating, they're done. And to a point where if a cat went 2 days without eating, they were ready to euthanize them. And now, having done animal hospice for years, and having many, many babies take their last breath on their own merit. So taking euthanasia off the table for a minute, just for the sake of this, saying that, you know, when there's a peaceful passing, and the body does what the body's going to do naturally. So you know that it was their actual end, as opposed to when you euthanize, you don't know if it was right when they were going to pass on their own, or if it could have been years after, you know, we don't know. That drilled into me about the eating thing has been thrown out the window. I mean, if an animal that thrives and loves food and lives to eat stops eating, it's powerful feedback for how they're feeling, for what's going on with their body, and we shift and we adjust and we use that information. But it's now become that an animal that was kind of a picky eater or kind of a lighter eater anyway, or even some of these voracious eaters have a shift over time, and their quality of life choices shift, where food is now not the most important thing to them anymore. They figured out we're always going to offer it to them. They finally wise up to that. But then sometimes they go off food, and I've seen babies not starving themselves and go for many, many days, and in some cases even weeks, with getting calories off our fingertips with just a little TLC and not properly eating. And these animals have been fine. Nobody's suffering. They're still up and about. It's kind of amazing. The body does amazing things when we back off and let it and don't try and stick our science on top of it. Do you have any experience around that?
Well, just some personal and some with some clients. One thing is, if it's an overweight cat who doesn't eat for a couple of days, that is a problem because they can start having problems with their liver. So, but we're talking about with a really overweight cat. We're not talking about a normal-sized cat. But cats can go several days without eating. One of the things is, if a cat or dog is vomiting, has diarrhea, has a virus or something, it's okay to fast them. a nice bone broth really is important. You do vegetables, and you can do just bone and a little chicken or whatever, and then you strain it, and you just give them the liquid. So as long as they're hydrated, that is the bigger part of this. They can go without eating, they can't go without drinking. But yeah, animals can heal. They just use less energy. They're not going to be running around the house crazy, but they might. You can look. You know your pet. You know the look in their eyes. You know the feel of their fur. You can tell if they're really sick or if they're starting to feel better. And if they get to the point, if they're not eating, I will always say try an integrative or holistic vet, because they're going to be more on the side of helping the whole body heal. Again, it's the body as a whole. One thing, and I'm glad you brought it up about, they're always going to get food. One of the worst things we can do for our pets at any age is free feeding. Not only free feeding it never gives the body enough time to process food and empty, which is super important for all organs. But it also puts you at a disadvantage for any kind of behavioral problems. When you have the power over the food, you have the power over the behavior. And so many behavioral problems can be fixed just by doing things with their food. I mean, cats that don't get along, you feed them on opposite sides of the door at the same time over several days. You can get. I've gone through it. I went through a whole episode of My Cat from Hell in my own house for 5 months, and I can't. It was horrible. But everything's fine. I mean, I did all the right things. It took a long time. My cat Obi's a little stubborn, and it was a whole thing. But using the power of food and not free feeding and getting all confrontations in a positive light, using a positive reinforcement like a treat, makes a huge difference. So it's to your advantage. Also, free feeding leads to obesity. Obesity is the base for kidney disease and for IBD and for diabetes and for a million other things. Just things like joint problems, arthritis. If the cat or dog is overweight, they're putting all that extra weight on those joints. And eventually there's going to be a problem. Old age is not a disease. Not every cat or dog should be getting arthritis or stomach problems. Those are symptoms of other things. Old age is not a disease.
So I have one last question that I think is a important one. It's especially relevant, probably more for cat people as opposed to dog people. If we're on, whether it's on the dry food today, whether it's on some kind of something, and then based on this information or a consult with you, someone wants to switch over to something new. What is onboarding? Let's just go with a cat as an example. You have a picky cat that has some kind of need that the person is motivated enough to come to you and to ask for your input. Like they're definitely working with Jodi, and they're definitely doing whatever Jodi says because there's like a big reason why they have to have a change in their life. And then how do you get the cat to eat it? Sometimes
it takes a lot.
They eat canned gross food that's delicious to them.
Oh, I know. Cats they can be a pain in the ass. Look, I'm just my own cat. Look, I've been through it too. It can take a month to switch a cat over to new food. The way I usually recommend is the first few days, you take a dollop of the new food, whatever it is. So if let's say you decide you're going to do homemade food, don't make a whole batch the first time out. Just maybe make the chicken with the calcium supplement, whatever. You put a dollop on the plate next to the regular food, so they're starting to get the smell, and they start associating that smell with their meal time. You might have to do that for 3 or 4 days. Then you maybe mix in a teeny little bit with their food, just a little bit, like a pinch. And slowly you start integrating more of the new food and less of the old food. And usually, most cats are decent after a week or 2 weeks. Some, to switch, my own cat, I'd like to use my own examples. It makes people feel better knowing that, it happens to all of us. My cat Emma, when I adopted her, she had the Poultry virus, and part of her nasal passage was probably gone. She doesn't smell, she touches more than she smells. And cats obviously use smell to eat. They only have 500 taste buds. We have like 15,000. Dogs have like 1,000. I don't know, it's crazy. The cats have like 50. They have like 500. So anyway, so it's texture is important to them. And smell. So now she was like, just walk her like, and she couldn't smell it. So she stopped eating homemade food, and I had to put her on a canned food, which is okay, and canned food has stronger smell, and it was fine. But I wanted her on raw food. I knew she wasn't going to thrive until she was on raw food. It took 4 months to switch her over to raw food. That was 3.5 years ago. She's here now. This 3.5 years ago, and she eats all raw food now, and no, I will not make raw food. And some people like it. I'll give them a recipe. I'll teach them how to do it. But I use, you know, a commercial brand that's excellent, because there's no way in hell I'm ever making raw rabbit in my house. It's just not going to happen.
Sorry, I know you're vegan. I can only imagine your disdain. Sorry.
Although I know Whole Foods might start selling ground rabbit, and I might try it at some point. Not me try the food, me try to make it. But anyway, the point is, it could take a while. She was an exception because obviously she was going through something with the virus, and she couldn't smell, and her taste was obviously off, so it took a while. With my cat, Obi, who I actually make food for, he took to homemade food. It was funny. At first, all I could do is make him chicken with the supplement and, what can I put? And pumpkin. I couldn't add any greenery into his food. So it was, now, if it doesn't have kale or broccoli, he's like, where the hell's my kale? So it just took a little while, you know. But he's been on that for like, just loves it, you know. And the other important thing I want to bring up is cats and dogs should not eat the same thing day after day, you know, week after week, month after month. It can lead to not only some nutritional deficiencies, but it can lead to intolerances. It's really important to have at least 2 different proteins in their diet. Not at the same time. It could be, like I said, by the week, by the month, whatever. I do, in our house, our cats eat 3 times a day because I'm an idiot, and I've gotten them on the schedule, so when I ever go away, it costs me a fortune in cat sitters. But they eat for breakfast and dinner is usually the same food, and then lunch they eat something different. So that way they get at least 2 different proteins every day. And that's important too, because you know what happens when they decide they don't like something or they're sick of something? To have to change and start all over again, oh God. This way at least there's something else going on. Or if the company stops making things. Just recently, Instinct Pet Foods used to make raw food that was for cats and for dogs. They stopped that. Now there's only 3 varieties for cats. And there's still like 7 or 8 for dogs, because cats always get the short end of the stick. Don't get me started. But they also changed the formula of the food. So it changed a lot. And what aggravates me the most, for most of my clients who were switching to raw for the first time, that was the best thing. It's easy to find. They even carry it at like Petco and PetSmart and different places. And they can get the same thing for their cat and for their dog. It was so convenient, and it makes things so much easier. But then they were bought. Well, 50% of the company was bought by a company in Europe. So whatever.
So when you're doing the multiples, so you do yours where it's of the 3 meals a day, there's at least one that has a different protein. So you mentioned, so some people can do every other week, alternating the protein, every month, swapping out if they buy in bulk meat or something.
Yeah, exactly. So they can do it recipe to recipe. If you're doing homemade food, you might do, let's say you do chicken this week, you might do beef next week, you might do buffalo, whatever you decide on. If you have a dog or a cat that's allergic to beef and chicken, you know, there's great alternatives, quail and pheasant and venison and all sorts of things that are more tolerated. Lamb used to be the thing they'd send everybody to, but lamb, I don't know what they've done, but lamb is causing as many problems as beef at this point for many dogs especially. Cats don't seem to like lamb too much, so, I mean, I have never seen a cat take down a lamb, or a cow, honestly, but I'm just saying.
Very good point. You know, and I had said that was my last question, and I lied. I thought of one more. While I have you, if I can have just a few more minutes.
Of course.
So, sometimes I don't come across people until they've already been to the vet and they're already working through a problem, and then I have the opportunity to introduce them to you, perhaps. And so sometimes in those cases, they're doing an elimination diet, which for them is often one of the kangaroos, right? Royal Canin has one, a few different brands have one. It's another dry food, so we know it's crap overall. However, the point of those diets, some people get on them and they think they're supposed to be on them for life. And for one, no. And for two, then what? So if they do come into your life at that point, where do you take them from there once they're on the, like, feed this one food for this long, see what happens, and okay, now where do we go reintroducing a more appropriate lifestyle food for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's done slowly. It absolutely has to be done slowly. One of the things I could say is, and I've seen this so many times with clients, even if a cat or dog is allergic to beef or chicken, it's amazing that if it's real food, if it's homemade food or raw food, they're no longer allergic to it. Part of it is because of in a canned food or dry food, the processing. And
yeah, same true for us, right? I mean, people have problem with foods that come in packages, and then that all of a sudden have fresh farm to table style, and it's less of an issue.
Absolutely, and it happens with a lot. But what I would do with them is, everything's going well. That's great. So keep that for one meal a day. Let's try something for another meal once they feel confident that they can go ahead and try it. And then from there we could switch. And so they'll always feel comfortable knowing they have a backup if another issue should occur. And you know, I've worked with somebody who, their dog had terrible anal gland problems. Yes, poop is my life. I said everybody talking about poop all day long. Poops and tushies, and it's just poop. And one of the things was, this dog was confirmed with the chicken allergy, and the allergy testing, don't even get, you don't need to do that. Just do elimination. It's much better. All the allergy tests come back the same. Your dog is allergic to mold and this. Everybody's allergic. Every single being is allergic to all the things that come back on those things. So save your money. Do not do that. Save your money and hire one of us to come help you. You have a lifetime of goodness. But one of the things with okay, going back to life. Anyway, so now they feel better. They're on this food. Let's get them something else. Let's try something else that might be different. Let's try pheasant. So now they have kangaroo and pheasant. And now we're starting to see that they're open to almost everything. Maybe they actually do have an honest-to-goodness allergy to chicken. So we'll never feed them chicken again. Now, some vets are convinced that if they're allergic to one kind of poultry, all poultry is out. And I understand that. But a lot of times it's not true. A lot of times turkey is perfectly fine. And it's also lower in fat. And it might be better for some dogs. But there's so many good alternatives out there, and many of these food companies, the good food companies, are offering these really novel, like we talked about Grandma Lucy's earlier. Now they have goat. I don't want to know where they source the goat, but they have goat. So you know, there's different things. So it's always good to try an alternate type of meat if your pet has a really bad allergy. And also, obviously, corn, soy, and wheat are no-nos in any pet food. If they're in there, they're just filler. If you see things like beet pulp, what that means is sugar. We don't need sugar added to diets. We don't need to see salt in there. If you're making homemade food, I do recommend using a little bit of like sea salt, which is high in minerals. They need obviously they need salt. You know, it's part of the electrolytes. But what happens in a lot of the processed foods, there's just way too much of it, just coming from many directions. So you know, it's really just knowing the balance, finding the right food. If homemade's not your thing, that's okay. You know, there's always a way to find the best way to meet your lifestyle. Excellent.
Well, I'm thrilled that we got together and did this, because I know I love you. I think that you have been an invaluable tool. I'm gonna put you in my tool belt, because it's really been helpful for people. And sometimes some veterinarians are into nutrition. They have some licensures and whatnot, but the bottom line is they're too busy. Their job is to be the veterinarian, diagnose, figure out the right treatment, and there's so much to that they don't have time for this. And the ones that are going to focus on it, I am sorry, but I can't help it. If you are backed by the company that pays your paycheck, I'm concerned that you're telling me something that's a little bit biased. And one of the things that with Animal RN I'm really proud of, I have some veterinarians that we work with very specifically when we need an at-home vet, when we need a vet that supports hospice, when we need a vet that's more integrative or more on the holistic side, more TCM. We have all these vets and we see them as specialists in their arenas. The beauty is I'm not paid by the bottom line of those veterinarians. So if I'm telling you that I believe your animal needs to go in, it comes from the core, the bottom line of all of what we do, and it's all about the animal. And they have to be well, and then your relationship with them needs to be well, and then my job is to protect y'all as a family unit from being oversold, crap you don't need, that's not even going to help you. And you fit that. Like, you're helpful, whether people are just taking a nice healthy animal and trying to go up to the next level and just be a little bit better. You know, with my own health, you and I have talked a little bit about my own health journey of eating a little bit better and a little bit better, and it's so different than a year and a half ago, and I would have never been able to make that huge leap, but that constant micro leveling up. So some people are looking for that for their pets, and some people do have a problem, a sickness, an illness, hospice, some reason why they're extra motivated to pay attention in this arena. And I think the time and money spent with you, you should double your rates because it's really been valuable. And I'm sure that I know on your website and from the families that we worked with together, the testimonials are amazing. You really have a way of working with people that is supportive of them, and like you said, you consider I don't want to spend more than this much time, or I don't have access to these things, and you're still able to give them a solution that works for their pets. And I just thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. The people you've spent time with so far have been tremendous. I mean, they're just, obviously they love their animals so much. They're open to ideas. That's the thing, is that people are open. It's a little bit easier. If they're not, I still work with them. It just sometimes takes a little longer. I mean, I've had people that have emailed me for a long time first, and I answer little questions here and there, and it takes them a year to hire me. And that's fine. You know, everybody's on their own journey, their own way. You have to feel comfortable. Look, when I went through it the first time with Caleb, when I went to that holistic vet, I wasn't open to everything. He's talking about raw food. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I just was not ready to hear all this. And, you know, I was panicked every minute because this poor cat was like, I mean, it was horrible. And it took a while, but once I got on that path, and actually one of my best friends now started as a client. She had emailed me a couple times on Facebook and asking, well, no, because the vet said it has to be on this, you know, blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, please hire me, please. They won me in an auction. There was a silent auction at an event. They won me in an auction. And that's how it all started. But now she's one of my best proponents, and that's, you know, that's part of it. But I love what you do. I think what you do is invaluable, too. I mean, helping those families and staying on board and not just doing pet sitting, but helping them through some of the most difficult decisions of their lives. Some of the just being there and being their voice of reason, getting them the right resources, finding them the right vet. Most people do not do what you do. Nobody does what you do. I mean, honestly, you are the only one that does what you do, which is why you're so special. So everybody hire Robyn.
No, we all love each other. Excellent. Okay, so I think the bottom line punchline here for me is you have that beautiful new website. I know that it's very easy to work with you between doing that form, hiring you right there from your website, and then between phone and email communications, you're able to support people wherever they are. And that's going to be my kind of like, I think that that's what people should do. If nothing else, they're going to get a review of what they're currently doing in that beautiful 12-page report that's loaded with resources. I'm not kidding when I say you don't charge enough, because I know the heart that you put into this. And that's how people can find you. I think that's brilliant. And of course, they can always find me, and I can always get to you if that's what they want to do. Our website is animalrn.com. And thank you so much for being on here, Jodi.
Thank you for inviting me.
I want to know which cat was running around like crazy.
Oh, Emma. I think she just
Emma?
pooping.
We'll have to find a picture of Emma to share later on. I'm glad she was entertaining.
Yeah, thank you.
Jodi. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.